Okay, Finn, do you want to say hello? Do you want to say hello? Media literacy is dead. Hi, I'm Mia, and today we're going to talk about the decline of media literacy through the Hunger Games prequel sequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I will be focusing solely on the books and not the movies. I actually have not seen the movie for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, so I literally couldn't reference it really if I tried. As a huge Hunger Games fan, I was extremely excited when they announced that there would be a follow-up novel to the Hunger Games trilogy. After all, 12-year-old me did read each of the books in the original trilogy at least 3 times. However, as I was reading the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes novel, I felt that there was a crucial difference between the symbols, motifs, and overall message and the communication of that message in comparison to the original 3 novels. Something felt off, and not necessarily in a bad way. And this is in no way a criticism of Suzanne Collins' writing. And I'm not trying to imply that the quality of her writing has declined, because I do not think that is the case. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is extremely well written, and Suzanne Collins' books are some of the only books that I still will read more than one time, simply just because I genuinely enjoy her writing style that much. What I'm actually trying to argue here is that Suzanne Collins is actually a very intelligent author. She knows who her audience is and how to communicate her message directly to that specific audience. A lot has changed within our culture and society between the years of 2008 and 2020, especially in relation to how we take in, consume, and analyze media. In The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Collins is able to communicate similar and relevant themes to the rest of the series to a new generation of readers through arguably less nuanced symbolism. And in my opinion, that is because she's aware of the overall decline of media literacy within the general public. However, before we get too far into this, I do want to define what media literacy is, as I will be referencing it throughout the video, and I want us all to be on the same page. A PBS blog post quoted the National Association for Media Literacy Education's definition of media literacy as the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. Media literacy is a broadened definition of literacy that includes media beyond text and promotes curiosity about the media we consume and create. Wikipedia also uses a similar definition. Media literacy is an expanded conceptualization of literacy that includes the ability to access and analyze media messages, as well as create, reflect, and take action using the power of information and communication to make a difference in the world. I do think that these are both sort of incomplete definitions in their own ways, but together they make a more comprehensive definition. Media literacy to me is the ability to access and analyze different forms of communication, including but not limited to text, in order to evaluate the content consumed and the implications of said content. An example of utilizing, quote, good media literacy skills would be finding a news article on Twitter. No, I will not be calling it X. Like most social media platforms, when quoted, only the article's headline will be seen on the post. Instead of simply relying on the headline, one would click the article, read it, and also look at both the original writer and publisher of the article, as well as the person who posted it, in order to find potential biases. However, before we deep dive into the decline, let's get into the plot of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes takes place approximately 64 years prior to the events of the first Hunger Games book, and 10 years after the rebellion that inspired the titular games. The plot follows Coriolanus Snow, the future president of Panem, through his journey mentoring the female tribute from District 12, Lucy Gray Baird, during the 10th annual Hunger Games. The Snow family used to be a wealthy and prominent family throughout the capital prior to the rebellion. Afterwards, however, the Snows lost their fortune, and the only members left of the family, as of the time of this story, are an 18-year-old Coriolanus, his 21-year-old cousin Tigress, and their grandmother. Throughout the book, this iteration of the Snow family is faced with potential eviction due to rising taxes throughout the capital. Coriolanus, also often called Corio, realizes that the only way to save his family is to rise in prominence and influence in their society. As noted in the beginning of the book, the world still thought Coriolanus rich, but his only real currency was charm. Due to the declining viewership of the games, the game makers decided to assign tribute mentors from the Capital Academy students, rewarding a scholarship to the winning mentor. This becomes Corio's overall objective. objective: win the games, win the scholarship, and redeem his family. However, when he is assigned the female District 12 tribute, this prospect seems far away. If you are unfamiliar with the lore of the Hunger Games, District 12 is where Katniss and Peeta from the original trilogy are from. This is the poorest district within Panem with the fewest amount of winners. Actually, no winners at the time of this novel. Lucy Gray, spoiler alert, is the first one. Lucy Gray Baird, the aforementioned female tribute from District 12, is a member of the Covey from District 12, which is a nomadic troupe known for their musical performances. So Covey is actually a word that refers to a social group of birds or a brood of young birds. Birds are a common metaphor for freedom throughout literature and media. The Covey does actually represent freedom, specifically freedom from societal expectations. The Covey is seen as neither district nor capital. It is assumed the Covey are directly inspired by the Romani people of Eastern Europe, and this differentiates Lucy Gray from the other tributes in a variety of ways, and it also makes her much more appealing to Coriolanus in many different ways as well. After Lucy Gray's name was called during the reaping, which is the ceremony in which they choose the tributes from each district, she actually threw a snake at District 12's mayor's daughter and sang the song "Nothing You Can Take From Me."
Nothing you can take was ever worth keeping. You can't take my sad, you can't take my talking. You can kiss my ass!
This was a strangely productive way of showing her charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, proving to the judges that she has what it takes to be America's next drag superstar.
Not this.
That joke was so stupid. Our titular songbird, Lucy Gray Baird's last name seems to be a combination of the two words bird and bard, which is a not too subtle metaphor for her Covey roots and ability to use her music and charm to her advantage. This overall drama at the reaping is when Coriolanus starts to get hope that Lucy Gray could win, meaning he could win too. The tributes from all the different districts are then transported to the capital to await their fates. Coriolanus tries to make a good impression with Lucy Gray and meets her at the train station. He's the only one of the mentors to do so, and upon seeing the train cars, Corio notes that, quote, they were transporting the tributes in livestock cars, and not very clean ones at that, end quote. It is at this point in the novel when Collins begins to truly craft the analogy of the tributes and animals. Throughout the novel, the tributes are compared to and treated like animals, specifically livestock like mentioned in the previous quote, or circus animals. Animals either butchered to feed humans or animals that essentially perform for human entertainment. The capital views the tributes, and by extension the districts they represent, as less than human. As the mentors get to know their tributes and try to strategize the best way to support them, much chaos ensues. Some mentors are actually even killed by their tributes or injured in a mysterious bombing of the Capitol arena. Things are not looking good with the game makers or the Academy, as now Capitol children are being affected by the games, and no one wants that. Who gives a shit if we kill these animalistic, disgusting district children? But if our children are dying, that's a problem. During this time, Coriolanus also grows closer to his classmate Sejanus. Sejanus originally came from District 2, but after his family earned enough money, they were able to buy their way into capital society. This puts him, in a way, a similar position to Lucy Gray, at least in Coriolanus's mind. However, as Lucy Gray feels she is neither district nor capital in any capacity, Sejanus sees himself as both, which makes him neither. Because of this, he has a unique point of view within the novel. He is deeply conflicted and empathetic, and he is often horrified by the treatment of the tributes. Sejanus is assigned the male tribute from District 2, Marcus, who is also a former classmate of his. During the aforementioned bombings, Marcus actually tried to escape from the arena. As punishment, the Capitol hung him in the arena during the games. Sejanus essentially tries to sacrifice himself by sneaking into the arena to look after Marcus during the games, and the head game maker, Dr. Gall, sends Corio into the arena to save him. Coriolanus does, and he ends up killing one of the tributes in self-defense. This is Coriolanus' first kill, and it does affect him deeply. More stuff happens, Lucy Gray is doing well, and a lot of this is due to Coriolanus cheating. First of all, I didn't mention this before, but he gave Lucy Gray his mother's compact to use as a token, which is something each tribute is allowed to bring in with them to the arena as a reminder of where they came from. He infers to her to put rat poison in it, which she does. And in addition to this, Coriolanus ends up getting access to these snake mutations as they're called in the books, or just simply mutt, that are going to be sent into the arena to attack the tributes. He drops Lucy Gray's handkerchief into their tank so they can get used to her scent, and because of this, they do not attack her, and she is able to survive. Lucy Gray ends up winning by essentially exhausting the other remaining tribute to his death. It is also important to note that Corio was working hard behind the scenes to encourage Lucy Gray to perform so the capital's citizens would sponsor her and give her water, food, and medicine in the arena. However, all is not well, as the game makers and dean of the academy are quick to find out Coriolanus cheated.
Rigor mortis, girl! It was rigor mortis!
They scrub away all evidence of the 10th annual Hunger Games in disgrace, refuse to reward Coriolanus his scholarship, and force him to serve as a peacekeeper for 20 years. He requests to be sent to District 12 so he can hang out with Lucy Gray, and they comply. After all, the two of them got pretty close during the games. Wink, wink. In District 12, Lucy Gray and Coriolanus are basically dating, but it's a secret. Sejanus is also forced to serve in the Peacekeepers, and he is also sent to District 12, which is fun for everyone. Sejanus ends up working with some local rebels, and Coriolanus and Lucy Gray struggle to not get involved. A lot of stuff happens, and eventually Coriolanus and Lucy Gray decide to run away from society altogether. However, Coriolanus gets paranoid, and in a moment of separation, he fears Lucy Gray's motives and tries to shoot her. It's not funny. He doesn't shoot her though, so that's good. They are then separated forever, and Coriolanus Snow is reborn as an alpha male freak. That's kind of a joke, but it's also kind of not. Listen to this excerpt from the epilogue. It's quite long though, so. Sometimes he would remember a moment of sweetness, and almost wished things had ended differently, but it wouldn't have worked out between them, even if he stayed. They were simply too different, and he didn't like love. The way it made him feel stupid and vulnerable. If he ever married, he'd choose someone incapable of swaying his heart, someone he hated even, so they could never manipulate him the way Lucy Gray had, never make him feel jealous or weak. So these are the events that lead us to the President Snow that we end up meeting in the original Hunger Games trilogy. Obviously, I did leave a lot of the plot out. It's a very long book, and I don't want to spoil everything. It's a good book. You'll read it. So, what is the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes about? In an open letter to fans, Suzanne Collins said this: "This book was an attempt to explore the state of nature debate through the tale of young President Snow while lifting the veil on the origin of the Hunger Games, which were not only designed to punish the districts, but to remind the audience of human beings' essential character." In the beginning of the physical copy of the book, Collins has various quotes from philosophers Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, as well as from William Wordsworth's lyrical ballads, that's a tongue twister, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I'm still reading. I have not finished it yet. Alas, I am still reading Frankenstein for the first time. All of these quotes support Collins's goal of exploring the state of nature debate. And if you are unfamiliar with the state of nature debate, doesn't sound real now that I've said it for a third time, it is essentially describing the way humans lived prior to civilization and asks, how does government emerge and why would anyone want to enter a state of society over that of nature? The Hunger Games series has always explored this, but what the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes does is take us closer to the quote uncivilized. Unlike the first book, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is only 10 years out from the rebellion, which one could argue brought their society closer to a state of nature. Once the rebels were subdued and the capital gained power again, they entered a new social contract. The characters in the novel are still feeling the repercussions of this shift. As a decade is, in the grand scheme of things, not a very long time, many of the students that we meet in the capital, including Coriolanus, were actually alive even if they were super young during the rebellion. And they can remember a life before, during, and after it. And because the Hunger Games are still relatively new, the game makers and the capital in general are still kind of working out all the kinks. But by the time we get to the 74th annual Hunger Games, like we do in the first book, they have kind of figured everything out, at least until Katniss gets involved. I can't find an exact source for this. I've been a fan for so long that there are some things that are just kind of like common knowledge to the fandom, and One of it is this. It's kind of said that Suzanne Collins was inspired to write the original trilogy after scrolling through channels on television and seeing the war in Afghanistan on the news juxtaposed with reality TV. But for Songbirds, and there is an actual source for this fact, Suzanne said she was inspired by the Reconstruction era after the American Civil War, as well as Europe after World War II. She said she thought about, quote, the challenges of food shortages, damaged infrastructure, confusion over how to proceed in peacetime, the relief that the war has ended coupled with the bitterness towards the wartime enemy, the need to place blame, end quote. While the original trilogy is about rebellion and revolution, this prequel is about rebuilding and reconstruction. How to be a human in society, not just after its fall, but the build-up after the fall. This series as a whole also frequently takes inspiration from the Roman Empire. For example, the name of the country Panem is a reference to the Latin phrase Panem et circenses, circenses, I don't speak Latin, and this means essentially bread and circuses. And this is referring to food and entertainment that a government provides to its subjects to appease public discontent. And the actual games of the Hunger Games are a general reference to the Roman Colosseum and how they would often use death as a way to entertain the masses. These are just two specific references, but trust that the Roman Empire is Suzanne Collins' actual Roman Empire. In an interview with David Leviathan, who is the VP, publisher, and editorial director at Scholastic, and one of her editors, Suzanne states that she uses both of her worlds, meaning the two universes in her two series, to explore the just war theory. She also explicitly explores the state of nature argument through the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I mention all of this to reiterate that Suzanne Collins is a brilliant and talented writer. She is deliberate in her symbols and references in her writing. As a longtime Hunger Games fan and self-proclaimed literature nerd, I mean, this is only 1.5 shelves of my bookshelf, so I noticed that the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes felt different in its execution of the themes than the trilogy did. For example, I think of the treatment of the tributes. In the Hunger Games, the tributes were treated in some ways the same as the people of the capital. They stayed in relatively nice places, they had good food, and were even given stylists and invited to parties. All of this to create a juxtaposition of sorts between the lavishness of the capital and the barbaric nature of the games. However, in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the tributes are shoved in cargo trains, kept in animal cages, and put on display as if they're in a circus. This is a quite literal way to tell the audience that the tributes are being treated like cargo and circus animals. And this is fine, it works, and it's even justified as it's still early in post-war reconstruction and they just don't have the funds to provide fancy housing and food for the tributes. But it goes beyond this. Just listen to how Suzanne Collins describes the train cars transporting the tributes. Quote, "They were designed not for passengers, but for cargo," end quote. Again, fine. But she does it again a page later, saying, quote, "They were transporting the tributes in livestock cars, and not very clean ones at that," end quote. And then again, quote, "It was then that Coriolanus saw the truck that awaited the tributes. Less than a truck than a cage on wheels. He again flashed back to the circus of his childhood, where he had seen wild animals, big cats and bears, confined to such transport," end quote. Just to reiterate, all of those quotes happen within like 5 to 10 pages of each other. And these were just a select few instances that were relatively short and easy to quote. The metaphor is repeated and drilled into the reader's mind at any chance Suzanne gets. And it's not even just with how the tributes are contained either. When Coriolanus is first surrounded by the tributes after meeting Lucy Gray in person for the first time, he says, quote, "The rest of them stared at him like a pack of feral animals eyeing a pampered poodle," end quote. Suzanne could have used a different simile here and made the same point. She could have said, for example, something like, "The rest of them stared at him like a starving orphan eyeing a buffet." But she didn't. She continues with this animalistic imagery. I already mentioned the on-the-noseness, for lack of a better word, of Lucy Gray's last name, as well as the Covey overall, but almost all of the names are just as on the nose. Coriolanus is actually a reference to a Roman general who led a successful siege of the ancient Italian city Corioli. Corioli. Guys, I don't know. It's also potentially a reference to the Shakespearean play based on the same lore. On the Wikipedia synopsis of the play, it says that, quote, Coriolanus flies into a rage and rails against the concept of popular rule. He compares allowing plebeians to have power over the patricians to allowing crows to peck the eagles, end quote, solidifying Snow's character as a representation of aristocratic rule. Side note here, if you want to watch a fantastic production of Shakespeare's Coriolanus, I highly recommend watching the National Theatre's recording of their production of Coriolanus with Tom Hiddleston and Hadley Fraser. It is so good and so homoerotic. No, really though, it's good. I watched it in high school and it changed the trajectory of my life. I really do I love Shakespeare and I love gay people. But Mia, you might be saying, we knew that Coriolanus was named Coriolanus in the original series too. Right, but guess what? It's a setup. It's a setup for an even more on-the-nose metaphor with Sejanus. You need that context to understand that Sejanus is a reference to an actual Roman soldier named Sejanus that became consul to the Roman Emperor Tiberius. The historical Sejanus, like the Sejanus in Songbirds, was also arrested and executed for conspiracy. And they actually both had dads named Strabo. Like, Suzanne, why did you name his dad Strabo too? What was the point of that? Overall, you could argue that the concept of Songbirds is more palatable than The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games follows a young girl from an impoverished background that is forced to fight for her life against other children in a huge arena, versus The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, where we follow a young white guy from a family that was once very wealthy, but have since fallen from grace due to circumstances out of their control. He's given the task to help a young girl survive, but falls in love, which sounds more digestible. In all honesty, when I first opened the book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, back in 2020 when it first came out, I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't know what the book was about. I didn't know what the concept was. Someone had just bought it for me, and I wanted to go into it without knowing what it was about, just like I did the original trilogy. But when I did realize what the book was about, I quickly shut it and I set it down for 4 years. Like, I literally did not open it until this year when I actually read it and finished it again. I'm being serious. Like, I opened it and I shut it because I did not want to read a book about a privileged 18-year-old white boy who is developing empathy for like the first time. It's not a point of view that I personally felt like I personally needed to explore. Like, I learned empathy back in like preschool. Like, I don't need a book to like show me how to do that, you know? Or like to show me that people that don't come from the same background as you are human. But you know, now that I know more people, I know that other people still do need to learn that lesson. This brings me to why. Like, why did I even make this video? I've said it before and I will say it again. I think Suzanne Collins is brilliant. I love her writing and I think she truly has a talent for crafting stories with true meaning. But like I also said, I have issues with The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's simple. It's not bad, just simple. However, I think Suzanne Collins did this on purpose. Media literacy has declined rapidly in the last decade or so, with the rise in social media and, god dare I say it, fake news.
You are fake news.
In the op-ed piece, Beyond the Blue Curtains, Decline of Media Literacy by Maxine Becerra, they argue that the decline of media literacy is directly related to the rise of social media and its impact on how we take in news and relevant information. Becerra states, quote, "Unfortunately, I feel there's been resistance to critical analysis from the moment we first stepped into a high school English class, and so these elements do not get properly examined. Analysis has become this pretentious activity reserved for academic circles, and it's troubling to think about how this mindset could affect us later," end quote. The title of the op-ed, I believe, references the infamous Reddit and Tumblr post in which an English teacher asks what the blue curtains in a book represent, and the student in the post argues that maybe the author just made the curtains blue. This post that I'm referencing is a critique on literary analysis and examining symbolism in pieces of media. This idea that people, especially uppity academics, read too much into things, and things can really just be that simple. The popularity of these posts cannot be understated, as they are still being reposted all the time to this day. The Hill referenced data collected by the nonprofit News Literacy Project in which they found 55% of students were not even remotely confident in their ability to recognize false information online. Media Literacy Now took a survey of 541 people between the ages of 19 and 81, and only 42% of respondents reported learning to analyze science news stories for bias and credibility in high school. I think Knives Nguyen for YR Media summed it up best by saying that, quote, "The internet's want for a singular correct opinion on every topic under the sun encourages the death of nuance and ambiguity. Without a doubt, a society that refuses to engage in critical thinking and takes the information it sees and hears for face value cannot defend itself from disinformation. A faulty news article can spread like wildfire out of fear. A reactionary video can be seen as real when its only goal is to gain likes and views." End quote. We live in a time where not just time is a commodity, but one's attention is as well. The amount of information we're able to take in online is pretty much infinite. With so much power in very little time, we have to choose where to invest our valuable attention. Why watch a 3-hour movie to maybe be entertained when I can watch 72,000 15-second TikToks in the same time and essentially get 72,000 tiny and immediate dopamine hits? Obviously, that's a stupid exaggeration, but I think we can all agree that our relationship to entertainment and media as a whole has changed. No one watches the news anymore. We get our news through Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, name another app. While it's great that these platforms can provide more accessibility to the news for people of all generations and backgrounds, and it can also provide different viewpoints and uncensored sources, we can also acknowledge that these platforms breed clickbait and fake news. I can admit that I'm a Gen Z that gets their news from Twitter, but I'm also careful about checking my sources and biases. However, not everyone does this. I think Suzanne can recognize this shift in her audience. After all, The Hunger Games is a young adult series. For Songbirds, she's writing for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Especially in this post-COVID school-age generation, you cannot count these young children to have the same literacy as previous generations. Things have changed. Education has changed. Media has changed. Do you think a teenage iPad baby could comprehend the war crimes described in the third Hunger Games novel entitled Mockingjay? And do you think they would realize that Coin is not a girl boss, and that Coin and Snow are both equally bad in kind of different ways, but also the same, and that they're essentially two sides of the same coin? Oh my god, another on-the-nose name. And that this also might be the issue of a two-party system. Do you think they would know that? Do you think they can comprehend that? I got a little sidetracked there, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, these iPad babies are eventually going to have to go to high school and take like an English class, and will have to analyze something for a grade. The baseline for literacy skills is so like on the floor right now. It's so different right now. And I think Suzanne can acknowledge this and plays into this for her audience. I think Suzanne acknowledges this and plays into this in her crafting and structuring of themes and messages in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The metaphors and symbols and similes are simple, but they are good and well crafted. She knows that young people need to know about these ideas, like the just war theory and state of nature debate, but you need to feed it to them like you would a pill for a dog, wrapped in a delicious piece of cheese. Or perhaps a Greenie's pill pocket, if you're fancy or rich. They're expensive. Through The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Suzanne Collins gives her readers an easy way to explore themes of class, control, and survival through its privileged protagonists and easy-to-follow figures of speech and tropes. But that's just a theory. A game theory. Obviously, I don't know Suzanne Collins personally. I didn't personally reach out to her and ask if that's why she was inspired. I couldn't find an interview where she said, "Hey, kids are dumb nowadays." She wouldn't say that, but you know, she means it. No, she doesn't. All this to say is that this is just kind of my opinion, an op-ed, if you will, on why I think The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes felt different from the original 3 books of the Hunger Games series while I was reading it. To me, it's personal, it's an opinion, okay? It's a compliment, Suzanne. Take it as a compliment. I think you're very smart, and I think you know your audience. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it here this far, thanks. Thanks. I had this one in the oven for a long time. Let me know if you want me to do more book talky type video essays where I read a book and talk about it. I like to read. I have books, but sometimes I need a push, an excuse to read more. So there was a book you would like me to read and analyze or talk about, let me know. I love a good book. This is the time where I ask you to like, subscribe, comment. I would love to know what your favorite Hunger Games novel is. My favorite is Catching Fire. For $2.99 a month, you could become a Mia Likes member. What's a Mia Likes member? Well, you pay me and you get a couple of perks. 1, you get priority reviews on your comments. I will like and or respond to your comments first. You also get an exclusive community members tab where we can chat, just us Mia Likes members and me. And you also will get a shout out at the end of all my videos, which brings me to this video's shout out. Xylorb, thank you so much for being a Mia Likes member. Thank you for watching and being here. Thank you all for watching and being here. I appreciate you all so much. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is, I literally can't believe I'm saying that. I want to do a live stream celebration as well as a giveaway. So more information on that soon. Yeah, I'm just so happy and excited. I'm having so much fun doing this. I hope you're having fun. I think I got to do this though. Out of frame. Okay, let me try again. I'm gonna edit the whistle in because I can't whistle. Bye.